welcome to the FinancialMD show. We are your hosts. I'm John Salitro. With me is Dr. Trevor Smith. And Trevor, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Finished up a great day of clinic.
Good. I did not. I was in my home office again. We're still technically in a pandemic, but that's okay. I've pimped it out pretty good, and I'm kind of enjoying working from home.
Nice.
So, but it makes podcasting doable. And if you missed the first episode, I encourage you to go back and listen to that. That gives some background on FinancialMD and who we are and why and what and how. And we thought we would start jumping in today's episode with the topics that we've got lined up that the residents and young physicians want to hear. And we've kind of grouped them in order of priority or demand. Based on the fact that, I myself have done probably 300 workshops and residency programs around the Midwest, and resoundingly, the most popular topic or question is on student loans. And so that's what we're going to cover today. And partially it's clickbait, but it is important stuff, and we're going to have some good info for you. So everybody likes to start with a story. Trevor, would you just give us your experience with student loans a little bit, how it started, where they came from, where they're at now, anything you're willing to share?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I was in med school from 2010 to 2014, and I was unfortunate enough to have those highest rates, I think, ever from federal loans. And so it was like 6.8%. directly, is that right? I think that's right. 6.8 directly from the government.
Average, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then friends, I didn't have private loans, but I had friends that did, and that was in like the 8+% range, since it's usually bumped up a little bit higher. So I was at like the 6.8% range and still had a decent amount. And probably about a year and a half into residency, I was able to, for whatever reason, I don't think I had even met you yet, but I had Googled around a little bit on the White Coat Investor and saw some refinancing info. So I found a couple good, rates there to refinance, and even came across a startup company called Link Capital, and I know they're still doing some stuff. And and they were just like, like a startup, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And they were like one of the first companies to do like a standard $100 a month payment, no matter how much you owed. So I ended up refinancing.
I started with that, but that's cool.
I think it was probably a year or even two before SoFi.
I do remember. I have a story about Capital too.
I tried to refi through SoFi, and they turned me down. They were like, no, we're not really doing medical student loans yet. And I was like, what? And they had done some people's market. Yeah, I was just thinking like, holy smokes, these Link Capital guys haven't made, because there was like DRB, Daring Rowington Bank, and there was another random one, like a smaller bank. I want to say not Common Bond, but there was another one kind of like that.
They were one of the earlier ones.
Anyways, there was a couple small banks that was kind of niche. They were doing this, and I think they were brilliant because we're such a reliable group, and we can't bankrupt the loans anyway. So it's a great thing to be doing. Anyways, I refinanced down to like 4.25 or something, I think, my first or second year. And to me, it just seemed like a no-brainer. And I was in ophthalmology and had no intention of trying to spend 10 years picking certain jobs just because I wanted to like get, a certain amount of money paid back by the government.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
why
I thought about
dig
it.
into the details, but why not PSLF? Why not stick to the federal?
Right. Part of it was I don't have like the most faith in the government to stick to what it says, because it tends to change its mind. So I didn't see it as the most reliable deal maker in the scenario. Mm-hmm. I felt like I could trust myself and invest in myself and my ability to negotiate and find good jobs better than I could trust them to pay my loans 10 years later. And the more they grow, the larger they be, the less they would want to pay them back, is kind of what I thought. And then the more likely they'd try to push some sort of cost of that back on me, which which it looks like they would. It would be, you know, a decent amount of taxes you'd have to pay on that because it's considered income. So
Mm-hmm.
I still feel very good about that decision. And everybody does it differently. I think it's totally reasonable if you're doing that job. But anyways, I was looking at private practice, and a lot of most ophthalmologists are private practice. So I figured the
Yeah.
sooner I refied, even if I'm turning down that one option, it was kind of the only thing I was turning down, and then I was guaranteeing saving somewhere between like $10,000 and $30,000 just by
Right.
refinancing.
Oh
And then
yeah.
I also had extra spending money because I was actually paying on some of my loan when I refied. So I just decided I would put it off, which eh, looking back on it, I probably spent most of that money on restaurants, and
But you would
would
have
have been
spent
a
it on
smart
interest
move
too. Yeah, it's hard to say.
to pay it. It's fine. Like honestly, I think I said last week, a lot of what you do in residency in terms of paying off your loans is a drop in the bucket. But
Mm-hmm.
refinancing is probably, if you're not going to do some sort of government attempted payoff thing at a nonprofit
Yep.
hospital, then it's such a no brainer, and I'm so glad that I did it. And it's easy too. It's easy. They don't charge you anything. I thought, oh, maybe they'll charge me like some sort of fee, like,
Sure.
you know, when you take out a loan on a house, and maybe they charge you $1,000 just from the
Mm-hmm.
start, just
Yep.
cash up front. And these refinance companies, they usually give you $300 to $700 just for
Yes.
graciously letting them buy your loan from somebody else, because it's
Yep.
it's free money for them. It's guaranteed. We're always going to pay off back our loans. So
Yep.
yeah, that's my
Okay.
story.
So, yeah, and there's a lot of stuff there. I mean, you're right. 6.8% is the national average, still is, I think. And that happened probably back in 2008, 2009. Um, yeah. When was med school for you? Would that have been
I it was
probably
I
oh
was 2010 to
six?
14. I'm pretty
Oh, okay.
sure that there was only 4 years where it was 6.8% the whole time,
Yeah.
4 years in a row, and those are the 4 years that I was in med school.
Uh-huh.
If I
Yeah.
remember correctly, I'm almost sure that it was still high. I think it was 6.6 the couple years before, but like right when I was in med school, or at least finishing college, I hit every single year of the highest percentage loans from the government ever. If you look back, it used to be like 2 to 3.
It did, and that's what I was going to say. When we
Mm-hmm.
started doing this whole resident workshop curriculum, that most of the residents refinancing was not a thing because student loans were
Right.
so stinking cheap at 1 to 3%
Mm-hmm.
that I've still got some clients that are attendings now in their late 30s, early 40s or more that have
That's
student
right.
loans, but our suggestion was like, man, take as long as you can to pay that sucker off because that's
Yeah,
cheap
those are
money.
amazing. Yeah.
And yeah, so I just had the conversation with one that's probably 44. He's a pathologist, and he was talking about we've kind of hit a lot of other goals, and student loans is his other thing. He's like, oh, I want to get
Mm-hmm.
them paid off. I'm like, dude, you got like 1.5 to 2% interest. Please don't. Like, I know you want to,
Yeah.
and I know it feels good, and just all that stuff. Emotionally, sure, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Financially and numbers wise, no, just don't. I mean, if you just look at it from strictly an interest rate standpoint, like if you had $1,000, would you put it in something that pays off a 2% loan, or an investment that could get you 8% per year? So it's,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to hear the argument from people, well, sure, but that 2% is a sure thing. Okay, fair. So then if we did a, risk
Yeah.
adjusted, we can go into all that stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of the simplest way of putting it. And like you said as well, the PSLF thing, the public service loan forgiveness, that's, I get that question pretty much every single lecture that I do. And it's should I plan on PSLF? What do you think about PSLF? Is it going to be around? Is it legit? Blah, blah, blah. I've heard this. I've heard
Right.
this. And I get this one all the time. Have you ever had anybody that's gotten forgiven?
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and no, I haven't yet.
Mm-hmm.
Heard of, seen articles, whatever, but we've got hundreds of physician clients, and we haven't had anybody that's gotten loans forgiven yet. The
Mm-hmm.
good chunk of them, I tend to, I'm with you, Trevor. If anybody has like even just any doubts, or even if they're in a nonprofit or government job, if they have any doubts, I say take the sure thing, get the refinance, get a low rate now, because here's how I typically explain it in my lectures is, okay, you got a 6.8% loan now. You refinance, especially these days, geez, rates are so low. But
Yeah.
let's say you get a 4%, okay? And you get that quote and you're like, no, I'm going to stick with my federal loan because the PSLF. Okay, I get it. So then they are working down this road on a 10-year payment schedule, and then the rest is going to get forgiven after that. But then what if at year 9.5, something drastic changes in Congress or the government, they change their minds or whatever? They can do that, right?
Hmm.
Some may say, well, there'd be a class action lawsuit, blah, blah, blah. Okay, maybe. But let's just say something happens and maybe they put an income cap on it or they put a cap on how much is forgiven, whatever. Then you're like, okay, well, that's all right. I'm just going to go refinance now. And what's
Yeah.
happened over the next 10 years or over those 10 years,
Yeah.
what's happened to interest rates?
Exactly.
They've gone up, and now, sure, you could refinance for 7% or 8%. And now you're like, shoot, well, I guess I'll just stick with these loans. And I should have refinanced 10 years ago. So
Hmm.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying that's
And
going to happen, but
right. Even let's say interest rates stay the same, you want to refinance later. That like the whole point of refinancing is getting your rate lower as soon as possible
yes.
because compound interest. So if you wait 7, 8 years and you're like, oh, well, now I'll refinance. Okay, well, 8 years worth of principal, or not of principal, of interest has been growing. And depending on what situation you have, it doesn't, in which bank you have, I guess with just straight up with the government,
Yeah.
uh, it does all fold back on and create, it compounds print fully under the principal. Some of those ones, if you refi during residency, just the interest accrues, or that you just accrue interest on the principal. So if you have $50,000 loan, you keep getting interest month by month on an annual rate
Right.
on the 50,000. They don't keep rolling it back over 50,100,
On the
50,500.
subsidized loans, sometimes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, on the subsidized ones they don't do that. But once you're an attending and you don't have one of those refinance deals, then it does. It all just keeps it. The snowball just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you wait, um, it's just that much bigger of a monster to have to take down. So definitely, it's the sooner the better for that scenario. For me, like one of the core questions was, do I want to be in control of my future, or do I want to
Mm-hmm.
depend on the government? Like, do I want it to be in my hands and like all these make a lot of decisions on these maybes
Yep.
that could happen? Maybe the program will still be there. Maybe I'll take a job with a nonprofit. Maybe I'll stick with it for 10 years. Maybe I won't take, I actually, I started in a fellowship, and it was at a private practice fellowship.
Yep.
So, and I matched into it, right? So let's say I like wanted to do this nonprofit thing, and that's not just true for like ophthalmology. That's true for lots of specialties. You can match into a fellowship with a private practice. They're not a nonprofit,
Hmm.
and you're just out of luck. I mean,
Yeah.
you break that up. You're 2 years at a fellowship or 3 years at a fellowship. I mean, that deal's done. It's not worth it to anymore. And let's say you're a general surgeon or something, and you're doing something between a 5 and 7 year residency, and then you're going to do a 3 to 4 year fellowship or something. Um, by the time you're starting your fellowship, that could have been 6 years of principal that was accruing interest at only 3% instead of 7 or 8. And you can take these private loans that are 8, 9% and refi them,
Yep.
down to 3% or something. I actually refied mine from almost 7 to 4 and a
Mm-hmm.
quarter. And then I refied it again a year ago when I was ready to actually start paying more aggressively on a 5 year term, all the way down to
Yeah.
3%. This is
Yeah.
before coronavirus COVID. Um, if I had waited a little bit, I probably could have gotten it down to 2.5, 2 and 3 quarters.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so anyways, I mean, there's just, I think to me that ends up adding up for most people. If you just said like, what should most people do? Most people are going to be in my position.
Yep.
Most people are not going to have all of those maybes line up as a yes.
Yes.
Somewhere along the way, one of those maybes is going to be a no, and then you're done, and you would have been better off refinancing yesterday, 4 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I say is it's so easy. It's free. It's more of,
Yeah.
wouldn't you rather have a sure thing in a lot of ways and a cheaper thing on a private? Yeah, what if it been, what if it would have been forgiven? Maybe it's a philosophical thing of, do you bet on a maybe? Or like you
Right.
said, do you bet on, here's what I know, I'm in control, I have this, I'm going to pay it off. It's just a thing, and it's part of the financial plan, and we work in there. And I always say to my residents, like, by the time we get into your first or second year of an attending, if we do this right, you're able to do three things in a pretty decent manner. You're able to put a decent amount on your student loans. You're able to, and by that I mean usually paid off within 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to put a decent amount towards retirement, and
Mm-hmm.
you're able to live a pretty decent lifestyle. And
Yep.
I have yet to have a attending that's like, I still have to live like a resident. You can, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, most of my attendings have, gotten the house and the cars, and are making good
Mm-hmm.
progress on their loans, and same for retirement. So it seems bleak now, but no, I mean, don't just like Trevor was saying, there's nothing wrong with paying off your loans yourself. That's what you signed up for, and we can do it at a much cheaper rate. And yeah,
Yeah.
gosh,
I'll add too that uh, because you're running FinancialMD and you're a financial advisor, I I bet more often than you expect, when you're talking about refinancing loans being a great decision, I would bet you the residents that you talk to, like you go to these programs and you talk to residents or here and there, you probably forget that they don't know you don't make any money off of that. Like
sure,
I bet you take that for granted, honestly, because like you're just like, oh, this is a great thing, you guys should do this. And in the back of their mind, it probably sounds like disability insurance, which you make a small commission on if you sell like a policy.
right,
And rightfully so. It's much more time intensive. You have to follow up, chase down tons of doctors to try to get them to fill out the health portion and do the phone interview. There's a couple steps. It's still not bad, but this is so simple. This is a few steps. Like SoFi, I did the whole thing on an app in under 15 minutes. And you personally don't make any money giving this advice unless you're Dr. Dolly on the White Coat Investor and you have a link. Like there's some
yeah,
referral bonuses. Maybe you get it's nothing. It's like maybe $100 if you got a referral bonus or something.
yeah. No,
And they
we had
cap
an
it. They cap
opportunity
it
with
too.
Common Bond,
Oh, did you?
and they
Yeah.
said you can get $300, or you can pass it to your clients. And we just said, give it to the clients. Well, because we
Yeah.
got a referral
That's great.
partnership with them, because it was like, whatever, no big deal. And I know for residents, sometimes $300 is $300, So,
Oh yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I
I
would
recommended
probably,
that. Mhm.
I'm probably shooting myself in the foot, as you say. I mean, I don't even think about it, but yeah, if I were a scrupulous financial advisor, it was like, I want as much of their money as possible. It would be, hey, make minimum payments on your federal loans for 10 years and hope it gets
That's
forgiven,
right.
and then invest the rest with me.
Yep.
Because if you
That's right.
refinance and you go into practice, you're, putting 3, 4 grand a month onto your student loans, and
Hmm.
that could be going into your investments. But
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah,
And
that's
there's also a lot of, I bet you have clients that come to you and say, hey, I want to put as much money into investments as possible because I'm not risk averse and I understand that I might be splitting hairs and barely
mhm,
breaking even, trying to beat the market, yada yada, and paying off my loans slower at 3% or 4%. I'm going to try to beat
yeah,
the market and get 8% to 12%. You know, people, that's not wrong. Tons of people try to do that, and that's fine. It's
yeah,
less of a sure thing. It's a different strategy. Some people will do that and they'll make more money than the next guy. Some people will
yeah,
do that and they'll lose a lot of money buying single stocks on Robinhood and they don't pay off their loans. That was me 3 4 years ago when I was in residency. I was like buying occasional stocks. It would go
mhm,
down, I would freak out, I would sell and buy high, I'd sell low. And then like you you have to like realize who you are. People are allowed
yeah,
to make mistakes. but if you keep making them, you're never going to get anywhere. So, that's why, you got to create a strategy that works for you. You got to know who you are and what your risk tolerance is. And um, people aren't wrong for doing one way or the other, but
No,
certainly refinancing is it's a net win for almost anybody who does it.
yeah, I would say so. I don't think anybody ever regrets that.
Hmm.
I it, I have a story about, gosh, my first year or two uh, in this business. I sat down with a couple. He was an ER resident. She was OBGYN. They were probably 750 to 800,000 in student loans between the two of them. And here I was in my late 20s, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, and we were starting to put together some plans because they were a year or two away from, maybe a year away from getting out of residency and getting into practice. And I said, okay, so we're going to probably budget, it's going to be probably $6,000 to $8,000 a month for both you guys on student loan payments. That's okay. You guys will make enough money that'll work. And he's like, nah, I'm not going to do that. And I was like, what now? And he's like, I don't want to pay those off. I mean, I will, but I want it to take as long as it possibly can. And I want to stretch those suckers out. I've just come to the conclusion I don't want to sacrifice lifestyle. And I'm just going to look at those as a, piece in my budget for the rest of my life. And that's just it. And I was like, okay. I'm not going to talk this guy out of this. But what I learned over the years was there's no right or wrong answer there. That was what
Hmm.
he wanted to do. That was, and as I got trained in being a financial planner and asking the question in every area of their finances, what's important to you about money? And you
Right.
find people's values and you find people's philosophies are different. And that's what drives their financial plan and drives all that stuff. And so for him, it was enjoying lifestyle, living off of his, he'd sacrifice for several years like you do, goes into practice. He's like, I'm not sacrificing anymore. And I was like, okay. Like, you know
Hmm.
what that means interest wise. He's like, yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm like, okay, as long as you know, that's my job. And then you
Hmm.
make the decision. And so, uh, love those guys. They're still clients today and we're, in practice and
Nice.
they're, making payments, but, it's, they want to stretch those out as 25 years is the plan.
Yeah. There is, this is not quite the same thing, but there is something to be said about the fact that doctors have so much earning potential that, you know, we talked a little bit about budgeting last week. You can kind of cut corners and you can restrict and you can live like a resident. Uh, but you can live like a resident and then you still come up against a wall. You can't live on $0. And
Yeah.
doctors can earn a lot. I mean, even if they're
Yeah.
already earning really well, there's different revenue streams and approaches to practice and growth areas for the practice, or starting their own practice, and taking home a higher percentage of what they make if they can be just as busy on their own. And there's so many ways of doing medicine that can increase your ceiling even higher. That, yeah, maybe that guy is he's just driven to grow and he doesn't want to think about what he has to pay on his loans. He's just going to try to out earn it. And that's another strategy too. And I mean,
Right.
you can do that. I mean, you totally can
Yeah.
do that. So.
And they're good savers. You know what I mean? It's not like they're wasting a bunch of money either. They're just he's like, debt averse means you don't like debt, but he's like averse to paying off debt. Like, not he's
Hmm.
not taking on more debt. He's been a good saver, and like their first year, they saved 100 grand, no problem, in just a savings account in addition to getting on track with other investments and stuff. So it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, they're not stupid. They're still disciplined. They're still good savers and great clients. And so that was a growing experience for me, and I learned some things. And but yeah, that's my story. I always have this little competition in my head as I go and visit residency programs. I'll never forget the first one, probably 2 years ago, where I met a guy and his wife was a resident as well, and he kind of pulled me aside. He's like, we've got over $1 million in student loans between the two of us. And I was like, ooh, okay. And in my head, I'm like, okay, my first one. I've been waiting to meet you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So already in residency, they have a negative net worth of $1 million.
Wow.
That's tough. That's a hard
Wow.
number to look at. But
That sounds like a very expensive
right,
undergrad.
both, yeah, for sure. So,
It's crazy.
but yeah, I would say where to get information. There's companies, Common Bond, SoFi, uh, Laurel Road, DRB, Earnest. I think Laurel Road might be DRB now. Earnest. There are so many refinancing companies. You can check out the White
Yeah.
Coat Investor. I will post either in the Facebook group or the page. They put together a list of like 10 or 15 student loan refinancing companies. And I would say that's a place to start, because getting the refinancing quotes, they do a soft credit pull so it doesn't affect your credit. Like Trevor said, it's quick, easy, it's free. Just start by taking a look, and then get a second opinion, whether it's meet with one of us or talk to a financial planner and just say, hey, here's what I got. Here's my trajectory career wise. What do you think? And
Mm-hmm.
again, there's no wrong decision here. Just get the facts first, and then you can make an informed decision and just make the one that feels right for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put in a plug for John here too. I mean, there's so many articles on like White Coat Investor, and I'm still just reading a lot of and I've done the White Coat Investor course and all that, but there's a lot of easy points you can grab right away, and the sooner you do, the more money you save. So if you're someone who's trying to optimize like now, and you want to do in just like a couple weeks something that could save you thousands and thousands of dollars, I mean, hit up John, and he can steer you towards some of those easy points right away, and you can just kind of rest easy for a couple of months knowing that you've done a lot of the heavy lifting, and then you can start doing the fine tuning and self education over time. So
Yeah, and that's what we try to do, at least within 2 or 3 weeks, like you said, get at least one good action plan put together, and the residents can walk away with, here's 5 or 6 bullet points of things you can do right now to get you on a better trajectory, and then step by step all the way through training, so that when they get started, they're starting out on the right foot as much as possible.
yep.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's our time
That's
today,
great.
guys. Hope that was helpful. I think we threw a lot at you. We'll, again, try to have resources on the website at financialmd.com. Check us out on Facebook. That's where we post all of the resources and links afterwards. Join the Facebook group. We've got a Financial MD community, which is made up of physicians, young and old, that are sharing tips, getting advice. And then be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, where we've got new videos coming out every week on a different financial topic. So leave us a review in iTunes for the podcast. Subscribe, share, get the word out, and slowly we will make the world of physician finance a better place. All right. Thanks, Trevor. We'll talk to you guys soon.